Stop. Talk to me.
Hi, Grant.
Hey, Crystal.
I hear we have a Prebis Leadership Awardee as our guest today.
We do. We are interviewing Afira and DeVries, who is amazing. She heads the Monarch School, and in that role is leading the only public K-12 institution in the country exclusively focused on educating unhoused students.
I have a feeling this interview is going to be good, so should we just jump to it?
She's awesome. Let's go right to it.
All right. See you on the other side.
All right. Afira, thank you so much for joining me today.
It is my pleasure, friend.
Yeah, it really is my pleasure, actually. You are. We got to know each other early in my journey in San Diego. We were both part of a Lead San Diego class and made a bunch of friends there. You stood out as somebody who was doing really important work and determined to make a difference. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that and what it's like to do that in this moment today. But I am curious first to start to ground this narrative in who you are as a person. And you've talked a lot, in my experience and in other places, about the important role your parents played in your background. So just tell us a little bit about where you came from and why that's important to you.
First of all, thank you for having me here. Thank you for giving me a reason to talk about my family, which is always fun for me. In the beginning of my career, I used to ask my parents for permission to talk about our life journey together, and then I kind of gave up on that because they've kind of come along with me and appreciate the way that it's important to me to use our own journey as a reflection of the journey that a lot of communities struggle with. So I am first generation Puerto Rican. My parents are from the island. I grew up on the East Coast, and my parents really struggled to support us and their extended family. The way my culture works is, you know, nobody makes it if anyone's suffering. So if one person gets a stable job, the entire family's moving into the stable living environment you're in, and it can really be a heavy burden, but also kind of beautiful. But my dad was drafted and went off to Vietnam and came back a different person and struggled to make it in society, ended up in prison, and came out. And my family really struggled with finding stability for a number of reasons, right? The institutional bigotry and racism that exists in our society. This is back in the 70s. The fact that my dad's an ex-con and carrying that with him through life and that journey. So what I learned from that experience really early on was really three things that matter a great deal to me. One is how important family is in sheltering kids, especially from the realities of the pain of society. I didn't have parents that made their struggles really evident to us. And so I didn't understand a lot of the times the things we were going through. But why that mattered was I didn't also perceive that I was limited in any way. My parents just wouldn't allow for that. And I have an older brother and a younger sister. My parents also helped to raise a couple of my cousins. And so we just didn't have that perception. And I see now in my line of work now and looking back how critically important that was. And I don't know how my parents knew to do that, but giving us the space to develop our own sense of control over our lives changed our lives, because we could have succumbed to that feeling that the world was in charge, right? And that we just kind of were floating through life. So that's been incredibly important to me. The second thing is really how valuable it is to know that there is a community that will pick up whatever you can't hold. And that is what my extended family was to us. Whenever there was more than my parents could take, they had people to rely on to support us. And again, as a kid, I didn't recognize that as something unusual. So now as an adult.
That was your bubble.
That was my bubble, but it was a bubble that really was made up of family and friends and people that just understood the same struggle. And that matters now in my work, Grant, because it's important to me, mostly as an advocate, to speak to the importance of community as an episteme,
Yeah.
and the way that that makes a difference in someone's ability to perceive, a kid's ability
Right.
to perceive their own stability and potential. And then the last thing really is education is the way out.
Yeah.
Education is the way out. And we don't live in a country that makes education easy for everyone.
Mm.
But it is the answer. And people know that. People can say that. They give a lot of lip service to that. But it's important to me to make sure I say it because, again, we don't make it easy for everybody.
It's so easy, knowing you as I do, to see how those 3 lessons shaped who you became and what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to tease that apart a little bit. And
Great.
I'm curious to start with how those 3 lessons shaped you as a leader. So you're, it clearly shaped your childhood, but why did it make you want to do what you're doing in life?
This goes back to my parents, too, on some level. Both of my parents achieved a measure of stability as we got older.
Mm.
And as a result of that, my mother became a social care professional, became a rape crisis counselor, a Spanish language rape crisis counselor. And my dad, who I mentioned was an ex-con, a Vietnam vet, was courted by gangs when he was young. My dad ended up going on to run a youth center in Worcester, Massachusetts for gang intervention and prevention support for kids. Mm. So my parents sort of embarked on this crazy journey in life, achieved stability in the face of a lot of adversity. And that was like genetic coding for me. Right. And I really understood. By the time I was about 17, I understood this is what I want to do. I want to take these skills that I feel like I have. When you're 17, you don't really know what the heck you are. But I had this feeling inside me that there was something, there was a skill set I had that could be helpful to other people like me.
Where do you think the social mission that they both clearly had came from for them?
My parents just really, again, that sense of community, that feeling that if I have a little bit, you should have a little bit more. And so as they, again, achieved some stability for us, they recognized that they were good, stable parents and wanted to help other kids. It was really that simple. They took foster kids. I had, upwards of 50 foster kids in my house growing up. As parents, as my parents stabilized, they just turned right around and chose to serve. And that was incredibly formidable for me.
Yeah, so incredible role modeling around that. Probably not easy as a kid, though, to also navigate that. When you talked about your dad and you said he came back a different person, how did that manifest for you as a child?
He was, I wasn't born yet when Dad went to Vietnam. When he got back, my understanding of his change was really, there was a positive aspect of it, which was a real focus on moving forward in life and not being rooted in the trauma that he had experienced. But it also was a very common experience that I think veterans experience, which is just this disconnect from what is appropriate in social order, right? What the standards of behavior were. And so if it hadn't been for the strength and presence of my mom in his life, I think that his life would have taken a very different trajectory. But the deviance that comes from not having boundaries around life and death as a result of being in war, in really critical war zones, is just, it changed him. And I'm not sure he's ever been the same as a result of it. It's always a struggle for my father to create the appropriate boundaries around the protecting of family and what's considered appropriate in society. So,
did you ever, you talk lovingly of this circle that you grew up in. Did you ever at the same time, you must have struggled with feeling othered in the broader society? I mean, you had almost every label available to you.
I forgot to mention, my parents converted to Islam when I was really little.
Yeah. Okay, so you got another one.
And my mom is half black. So let's just decide that if somebody hates it, I am it. So
So how was that for you growing up?
It was extraordinary in that I have a very deep well of cultural identity to draw from, and a really clear understanding of the importance of culture in identity and in shaping who you become. Conversely, I have been in situations of overt and micro racist and aggressive environments really from the time I was very little. Just crazy little things too. As I remember being in college, and the first time I went to get my hair cut in college, I was in the South. I went to college in the South for undergraduate. And I walked into this hair salon, and it was like a record scratched. And the lady said, I'll just say it the way she said it, "What is you?" And I said, "Huh?" Because I'm from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Are you black or are you white?"
Wow.
And I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, we don't do your kind's hair."
Just straight out.
Yeah. She made the decision for me and decided that they didn't do my kind's hair.
Yeah.
That seems maybe bigger to some people than others, but there are just so many collections of that because it came in so many different forms. I wore hijab until I was 18. And so I remember being run out of an amusement park with my family once, being called all kinds of slurs. The experience of knowing what it feels like to be marginalized has carried me professionally and has really fired my fuel for advocacy.
Okay. So let's fast forward to what you do today and how that translates into what you do today. Tell us a little bit about the Monarch School and what drew you to become the leader of an institution like that.
Yeah. I have been a social care professional for, it's 27 years now. I'm also an applied sociologist. And I really love, as a field of practice, as a sociologist, working on scaling really, really strong social programs. So I was doing that work prior to coming here to San Diego for an organization called Spring Impact, which is a global entity. And what I love about that, Grant, is the idea that one organization, one tiny group of people somewhere in the world figured out how to solve a problem, even if it was for 5 or 10 people, but they figured out how to address a social issue. And they may not have the bandwidth or skill or knowledge to scale that idea so that it impacts more people. But I do, right? I and my team, right? We have this idea, this approach. And I love that idea. To me, that is how systems change, manifests in practical ways, right? So when I got the call to consider Monarch School, initially, I was so happy doing what I was doing. I was like, I think I'll stay where I am. But then I understood.
And remind us where that was.
So I lived in Virginia.
Yeah.
I was the CEO of the United Way in Roanoke, Virginia, and I left that job to work on this in this global program, but I didn't leave Virginia. So I was traveling a lot.
Right.
And,
So
I have children. And
San Diego.
I get this call from San Diego, and I'm like, I am busy. I'm trying to be a mother. I'm trying to do all this stuff. But, and I was traveling too much. I was already feeling the pressure of not being the mom I wanted to be, but loving my work, knowing something had to give, and then COVID hit. So now I'm really dealing with this because you can't travel. I wasn't traveling. I wasn't able to serve the way I wanted to. But what did it for me with Monarch was when it was just a line in passing in the interview process where one of the board members said to me, "Well, we're the only of our kind." And that's when I was like, "What?" And that was it. I mean, I said, "Okay, I'm going to come and check this out." And I walked in the doors. I came out. I walked in the doors. The school was empty. It was COVID. But there's something about the energy at Monarch School that feels like magic. You can feel how different the energy is in that place because it's built on the premise that this is a space of safety and that this is a place where kids can be kids and investigate who they're meant to be. And I just felt it and fell in love with it, and then already have this love for scaling important social work and thought, man, this is just a gem. It's the only of its kind in the entire country, in a country where homelessness is ubiquitous. Right. The 1.3 million unhoused kids in the United States, and there's only one Monarch School.
So how is that? This is actually something I wanted to ask you anyway, so I'll ask you now. How is that possible?
It's a great question. No, it's a great question. So there's legislation that was ratified in, I think, 1989. It's called the McKinney-Vento legislation. And it's great in a lot of ways. It provides federal funding for school systems to support unhoused students. However, in that legislation, it stipulates that schools cannot be segregated to utilize those resources to address the needs of unhoused kids, meaning you can't have a school with unhoused kids exclusively. So Monarch School is grandfathered into that legislation because we pre-existed. Right. Now, the problem with that is since then, the sociology on the trauma associated with homelessness has come a long way. Right. We now understand more about the psychology of homelessness. We now understand the importance of the locus of control in the development of a student and how important it is for kids to not feel like they have to hide and to not feel like their trauma is a secret. Well, all of that's changed so much. But as with so much legislation, just because times have changed doesn't mean the legislation comes along with it.
Right.
So that's partly why there's only one Monarch School. But I've kind of found a way around that in that the facility isn't what makes Monarch Monarch. It's our practices, approaches, and the exceptional training of our staff. And so we've codified that now and turned that into something that we can scale through learning and practice sharing.
So when you talk about, okay, here is this school for unhoused children, I think many of us hearing the concept of segregation in the context of that would say, oh, yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Right.
So I totally get the history of the legislation. Talk to us about why it works. What is it about the having this population in this school in San Diego that to you stands out as having tremendous value to those students?
Well, so I'll work my way back from evidence.
Yeah.
Right? The evidence is really, really clear. So just in the state of California, kids who are known to be unhoused in a traditional school setting, the average graduation rate is 69% of that population. We boast about a 93% graduation rate.
Okay.
And there's really no difference between our student population in terms of their living condition and the condition of unhoused kids in traditional school settings. So then you have to ask the question, right? Well, why is there such a difference? The difference is the understanding of the human nature involved in being homeless, right? The realities of the robbery of dignity that happens when a kid feels exposed in a school setting that is not able to provide for their really core needs. You show up and you're dirty and you need to take a shower, hard to do in a traditional school.
Right.
You show up in dirty clothes, hard to do hard to figure out, right? A toothache, a teen pregnancy, domestic violence in your family setting. These are things that kids learn to hide very early. And when you are hiding and suppressing pain and trauma, you definitely aren't learning and you definitely aren't healing. So when you flip that on its head, which is what Monarch does, and create an environment where learning is important, but it's actually not the number one priority. The number one priority is let's get you here and let's get you in a mental and emotional state to be able to learn. That makes a massive difference. Then you couple that with the recognition that every other kid in that environment is struggling with a similar situation that you are. Well, that creates a sense of belonging and completely eliminates that barrier or that feeling of I need to fly under the radar.
Right.
I need to go hide in the bathroom all day. That is gone.
Other kids will make fun of me.
Other kids are going to look at me and know that my parents are whatever. The stories that kids tell themselves are not false stories. Right? They're real stories and they're afraid of them. But at Monarch, they don't have to be. And what that does is it leaves a lot of room for a kid to understand their own gifts, their own potential. That's what gets clouded for a kid, right? A kid isn't looking at themselves and understanding, oh, I'm a great artist, I'm a great athlete.
Right.
They're living in survival mode. And when you clear the brush for a kid to figure out what their individual gifts are, regardless of their circumstances, well, now you've got answers.
Probably the level on which most parents can understand this is what we now know about sending kids to school hungry. If your child is hungry, they're not going to learn. you're just adding a whole set of layers of other social needs that your students also need to have attended to so they can be ready to learn. And you're trying to get them into that space.
That's right. And what adds to the uniqueness of it is that level of care and social intervention is equally present for parents and caregivers at Monarch. So what we're doing then is we're addressing the holistic needs of the family at our school. We're a community school, which makes it possible for us to send the kid back into the arms of a family that is also making progress. And that's how you achieve the kind of change that we achieve.
And what's the relationship like, since you're an anomaly within the school district? What is the relationship like with the school district in terms of how they think of you as this very unusual entity?
Well, it's a great question because that's part of what makes us so unique. We're a public-private partnership, which means Monarch School Project is the nonprofit side of the organization. It happens to be the larger side because, as I mentioned, that's really the priority work.
Right.
But we actually partner with the San Diego County Office of Education. And our superintendent, Gloria Cereza, is just, a genius, as is her team, because what we're doing is they're sending us, well-credentialed, well-trained academic instructors, teachers, and their curriculum. And we're sharing space. We're two organizations sharing space to address the needs of the same population. So we're such a unique organization that we're viewed as, either lunatics or as this thing we should all try to become, right? And there are a lot of organizations that don't quite get us but want to. And there are others that really don't like the idea of us being a siphon from other school districts, right? Now, we don't hear that as much now because the issues associated with homelessness are so present, it's hard to deny them. But the reality is school districts are businesses, and each kid is a commodity. And so when a kid leaves a school district to go to a special environment like ours, correct, the money follows the kid. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done around advocating for that. But that's why our relationship with SDCOE is so important, because they block and tackle on that. And they do a really good job of drawing the line in the sand and saying, this is important for these kids, and we will protect them and their needs.
And where do most of the kids come from?
Well, the reason why we're associated with SDCOE in such a tight way is because our kids come from all over San Diego County. And they take public transit to get to us. A lot of our kids live right near the border and, have a hard time getting to school in the morning, but they figured out their truck. But this is one of the reasons why we're a K-12 grant. A lot of people don't know the history of that, but we started off as a high school. But kids get parentalized pretty young when their families struggle. And so now we've got, ninth grader coming with 5 of their younger siblings that are just hanging out all day waiting for their older sibling to be done with school. And we recognize, this is some years ago, we recognized we need a learning environment for those kids too. So we've kind of evolved with them. But they're coming from all over. We have students from El Cajon, from Oceanside, from San Ysidro, and we have to be that kind of place for our kids.
And how many children have you got right now?
We fluctuate between about 280 to 300 on an annual.
So it's a large population.
It's large, but it's not enough, right? We do what we can for the population we serve now. We also support about another 165 alumni. One of the other really unique aspects of Monarch is that we follow our kids into adulthood. So when they graduate, we're with them for about a decade afterward.
Really?
Yeah. We behave, I like to think of it as sort of surrogate grandparents.
Yeah.
We're there if they need us, and they often do.
And they come back, and they
do.
Yeah.
And it could be simple things. It could be I need steel toe boots, or it could be I haven't paid my electric bill in 3 months and I need some support.
Wow.
But we do that because our kids enter into adulthood. When they graduate from Monarch, it is incredibly rare for one of our graduates to find themselves in a position of homelessness again in adulthood. They struggle sometimes, but they don't repeat that cycle. And that's because we stick it out with them. Oftentimes. It's not the only reason, but that contributes.
You refer to the model you use as a strengths-based model.
It is a strengths-based model.
And talk a little bit about that. What does that look like for
Right.
you?
So this is really important to me. And this goes back to the earlier question
Yeah.
you asked me about my family. A strength-based model is one that roots social service in the identification of a family's assets rather than their deficits, and leveraging those assets to discover potential solutions that are unique to that family. So if I sit down with you and you are an unhoused mom, and the traditional social care approach would be something along the lines of, what is the problem? What do you need? Right? Where did things go wrong?
Right. How do we fix that?
How do we fix you? How do we
Right.
fix that? How
That's
do we
right.
fix the
Yeah.
situation? Right? A strength-based approach is, tell me about what you're proud of. What are you good at? Who are the people around you that you rely on for support? Tell me what you do absolutely best as a parent, as a woman, as a leader in your community. Talk to me about what's good and strong. And then you transition that conversation into, how can we take this inventory of assets and figure out how to leverage those to come up with a solution that is unique to your situation. That is a strength-based approach. It is a rare approach to social care, and I am on a crusade to make it a more common and popular
Do you
approach.
find that the kids who walk through your doors are prepared to have that conversation?
No. It depends on their age and their developmental readiness for it. But what I do find is that their parents and caregivers are, and that they are often surprised by the questions, but able to answer them in a way that is inspiring.
Have you seen a change? You've been at this for several years now. I'm just curious, given the changing tone of conversations in our society around how we view people among us who are vulnerable or dealing with various life challenges. Have you seen any changes in how your students think of themselves, or and how so? What are you
What a great
witnessing?
question. That is, Grant, that's probably the most unique question I've been asked in a long time, because you're asking me about the way students perceive themselves, which is a much different question than how does the world perceive them. And I'm battling that question all the time. I will say this. Our kids, don't understand what homelessness is. If they have a place to sleep, and if they're surrounded by people they love, the younger the kid, the less they even understand the way the world is defining their experience. And so that's important to us, because if a kid hasn't defined themselves in a position of deficit, then why should we inform them that that's how they should think? Right. And as they get older and they're coming up in an environment that doesn't allow for them to believe that that is their definition, well, then they begin to push back on that definition as they enter their middle and high school years. And so now we've got high school students. This last class, my students my graduating class just received their diplomas last week, or the week before last. And these kids are going to go on to do extraordinary things. All right. They're brilliant kids. And I remember when most of them were juniors, we had this almost, I don't want to call it a revolt, but a moment where this particular cohort of students pulled the adults aside and said, stop allowing people to walk through our school and view us like we're a problem that they need to solve. We are individual human beings with a lot of gifts and things to offer, and our living situation does not define us. Our kids reminded us of that.
Wow.
So their view of themselves is really evidence of what happens when you put a kid in an environment where they can understand who they are in contrast to their circumstances.
In a way, you've answered this question, but what do you think educators and policymakers get wrong about this population of kids?
Stop telling kids what they are capable of. Stop setting the bar at levels that seem to make sense to you based on circumstantial evidence rather than what is true for kids. The other message I would deliver is each child is an individual human being, and their needs are individualistic in nature. When we create academic environments that don't allow for individuality, what we are doing is intentionally marginalizing kids who learn differently, kids who think differently, and kids who have more or less than others. That is unhealthy for society. It is a perpetuating issue. That is a problem that we haven't addressed in this country. I mean, and then there's just the distribution of wealth, Grant. You know, just think about the ways that, you know, when I think about our own community, there are school districts that have so much more than others do. There's no really good rationale for that other than taxpayer money. Who cares? Right. They're all kids. Yeah. We've got to distribute this wealth differently.
And learning environments do matter. I mean,
they're key.
Yeah.
I mean, where'd your kids spend most of their childhood? Because mine spent it in a classroom.
Right. Exactly. One experience, I've had multiple experiences of you in different settings. And one was at the Monarch School when you were having your arts event, which was a fundraising event for the school where you show off the artwork by the kids that they donate and you sell. And you and I were talking, and you got distracted because a student that you knew, I didn't know, but you obviously did, started playing the piano.
Oh, yeah, you were with me when that happened.
I was. Yeah. And I saw your face transform because you were just blown away by this young man sitting at the piano and playing. Talk about that a little bit. Why was that an important moment for you?
Okay. So that young man, I'm going to call him Dan for the purposes of this. Yeah. We just opened the Chrysalis, which is our art center, and in he walks with his. He's big man on campus, right? He's our star athlete.
Yeah, tall, good-looking kid.
Tall, good-looking kid, incredible basketball player and football player, athlete, and so big man on campus, right? But he's known as an athlete. He is also a young man who has never had a stable home. He's been unhoused from birth and has had a really turbulent childhood and found, a sense of self in sports. But in he walks into the Chrysalis. You and I were chatting, and I think with some other people, but he made a beeline. I don't know if you remember this. He went directly to the piano and sat down at the piano. And what was shocking was that he played it.
Yeah.
And that he played it well.
He did. Yeah.
And everybody's jaw dropped because it was one thing to hear the piano music, but then to look and to see that it was him. Because no one associated Dan with music. They associated him with sports, which was a real learning for me, right? And so we're having the conversation afterward, and I'm asking him, where did you learn to do this? Like, how do you know how to play the piano? And the story is mind-blowing. He has loved piano since he was a little baby because his mother listened to piano music and musical. She liked instrumental music from utero all the way through his childhood. So when he was little, he started looking on YouTube at videos for how to play piano. And he would play air piano for the majority of his childhood.
Really?
Yes. And so when he walked into the Chrysalis that day, when you and I were standing there, he sat down at the piano and played piano for the first time in his life on real keys.
That is mind-blowing.
Isn't it?
That is no wonder you looked, you just looked stunned.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. But the story behind it, it's just, he was so excited to finally be able to touch actual keys for the first time because he learned how to play by watching YouTube videos and using his imagination. It's crazy. It's a beautiful story. Yeah. And here's the other thing about that story. How dare any of us, right, myself included, develop a comprehensive picture of who we thought this young man was without allowing him to lead the way in that definition process, right? Was a reminder. I don't have the right to decide what any kid is capable of. That's their job. And our job is to just make space for them to come to that conclusion.
I love that story. Thank you. And I don't think I knew all of that. So
but I forgot you were with me because I lost my mind. I was like, what is happening? Yeah.
Are there, before we move on, I should ask you, are there other moments that have, I'm sure there are, but you have so many exceptional stories and exceptional students. Are there others that you would share to illustrate the point about how special these kids are and why
so
you
many.
approach the work the way you do?
Yeah, there's so many. I talked a little bit about the older kids, but the little ones, there's this really, obviously little kids are always adorable, right? But our kids are adorable and managing complex trauma. And sometimes they take on adult behaviors really young. So there's this one little guy who, when I met him, he was acting a fool on the basketball court. He's 8 years old. Adorable. This kid is a little cherub. Adorable. Mouth like a sailor. You wouldn't believe the things this child would come out of his mouth. You just wouldn't believe it. So he's bullying another kid on the basketball court, little girl. And so I come over. Now, one of the things about the way Monarch operates is we don't do punishment the same way a lot of other more traditional schools do. We believe in restorative practice. And so that first means, and being trauma informed. So that first means asking a lot of questions, like what's happening here, So I got there. I asked the other little girl, I was like, hey, why don't you go off and do something else? We're going to talk. Now we're still on the basketball court, and he turns on me and just unleashes vitriol like I've never heard. Just F you, and who are you? And he's so cute too, like saying all these crazy things. So I'm listening to him, and he went on and on. And when he was done, I said, I heard you're really good at basketball. I'm not very good. Why don't you show me what you can do? And he was, jarred by that because he just thought this was going to turn into a whole thing. And he just unleashed this whole diatribe on me. And I was like, tell me about what you do. But I heard you're good at basketball. And so it distracted him. And so he kind of said, what? And I said, you heard me. I want to see what you can do. You're 8 years old. You're little, but I heard you're really good. Let me see. And he did. He took the basketball and he's tossing it. And as he's doing that, we're talking. And I'm talking to him about, why are you so angry? Who are you really angry at? Was it really her? How do you feel about that? Wouldn't it kind of hurt your feelings? And then I'm throwing the ball and he's telling me how much I suck at basketball and how I should be embarrassed and ashamed of myself. And I said, well, I'm not, but you can teach me. Anyway, we started a little relationship that day. And from that day on, every single day, I would check in with him. And finally, after a few weeks, he turns to me and because he's walking up the hallway and he turns to me and says, why are you always bothering me? He says, why are you always asking me how I'm doing? I said, because I like you. And he said, nobody likes me. And I said, well, I like you. Well, now what are you going to do? Like, we're friends,
right,
whether you like it or not. And after a while, his behavior started to change. His grades started to change. He looked forward to coming to tell me how he had improved, what he got on his math test, what I thought about his new sneakers. And he changed. And I'm not saying I'm some sort of savior, but it is an example of what happens when there's one stable, consistent, even-keeled, neutral adult in a kid's life. That is the one thing that if I were to talking to teachers across America, I would remind them of. Your emotions are meaningless in an environment where kids are struggling with things that you'll never understand. So be that neutral, calm adult and watch how they change.
Such a powerful story. And I think also models what you're talking about in terms of your approach with focusing on his strengths too. So you're modeling the calm behavior, but you're also finding something to value in him that he can identify with.
That's right. And now he perceives himself as a basketball player and as a scholar. And he has helped to learn himself better by just being supported in that.
Yeah, incredible. Well, another way that I have experienced you is as a very powerful leader and public speaker, extraordinary public speaker, actually. Like me, you like to speak without notes, and you've delivered some of the most amazing talks that I've seen. Does that is because you are also an advocate, and how much of your role do you believe is to be an advocate, not just an educator?
I think that is the job. I think that is the job.
And say more about why.
I think because when you consider how often society, particularly decision makers around policy, around funding, around government, when you consider how infrequently decision makers are considerate of lived experience and are considerate of voices that are accurately reflective of the circumstances that they're making decisions for, there has to be a cohort of leaders that are willing to speak truth to power in representation of others without expecting the ego trip that comes along with being in that position. You know, I don't believe in heroic leadership. I believe in the importance of advocacy. And it really comes down to one thing, which is I'm brown. I know what it feels like. I have a platform. I have a responsibility. So every job I do is about that. It's what can I do to better represent a population that doesn't have the voice that I have now acquired. And so that's the job. You know, when I'm raising money for my school, I'm an advocate, not a fundraiser. I'm an advocate. We're trying to change things and solve things. When I'm giving speeches, I'm not trying to advance my own reputation. I'm trying to make a point, right? Right. It's critical. It's critical to the work, because if I didn't perceive it that way, then it would just be a job, right? And it would make nothing better. It would just keep things status quo.
So I want to take a recent example of this where you wrote an extraordinary op-ed for the San Diego Union Tribune, in which you described the set of policies coming out of the White House at the moment as cruelty disguised as policy. Can you say a little bit more about what you were talking about in that op-ed and why you, well, we'll come to why you felt compelled to write it in a moment.
Yeah. Oh boy. There's a lot of reasons that compel me to write it. But what I meant was really very much what I said. The utter lack of compassion and empathy for struggle has never been more evident in this country than it is now, right? It is rooted in a belief that if you don't have enough, it's your fault. Everything about our society's infrastructure is evidence to the contrary of that notion, right? It is not easy to get a living wage job. It is not easy to get into a place of shelter or home of your own that's affordable. For people who are educated and well compensated, it's hard. How dare we now make kids pay for the idea that their struggles are probably their fault or the fault of the people who bore them, right? Or who brought them into the society. It's cruel because it is not rooted in reality or even logic. It's rooted in a phony sense of fiscal accountability. But really what we're talking about is creating and sustaining a hierarchy and social order that doesn't allow for the mitigation of oppression. You know, we are not a society that's known for being intentionally oppressive, right? We're really proud of ourselves for being a nation that is sort of famous for being a place where you can come and succeed. And if you work hard enough, you can succeed here. But everything that we're doing now, policy-wise, is setting us up for the opposite truth. And we've always been challenged with the realities of our societal structure. But there was this belief system at the root of it that was, with the right education, the right support, freedom means being able to live and stand on your own 2 feet and take care of your own. How dare we now look at kids and take away what minimal resources are available to them, whether they came here from another country or not. They're still children. The cruelty involved in deciding we don't care is reprehensible and needs to be spoken of at minimum and addressed permanently at best.
So a lot of people in the present environment would agree. I mean, first of all, a lot of people do agree. And a lot of people in your position wouldn't speak out because it would feel safer not to. And the pressures might be to just try and keep your head down and do your work. That's not you. I know that's not you. But tell me what it is about you that made you want to speak up about this.
I had a student I'm going to call him Gus. And his mom had been deported. He's 11. His mom had been deported. His father had been detained. And he was now an unaccompanied minor under this administration. And the fear and pain of not knowing how I was going to be able to protect him, all of us, not just me, all of the adults at Monarch that knew him and love him, how are we going to protect him? How are we going to make sure that he doesn't become detained himself and thrown into some unnamed camp somewhere? We know this child. We know what he looks like when he laughs. We know his sense of humor. He's wily and brilliant, great at math, really good at soccer. We know him. And the feeling of not being able to protect him. He came here when he was one year old from Guatemala. He's American. This is what he knows. I understood it to be the first of many of those situations. And I love him. And I wanted to save him and couldn't. I can't abide. I don't care who gets angry with me. Right? I don't care if people decide that, they don't want to support us because we're making a stand that feels or sounds political. It's unimportant. These years are going to pass, and we're all going to look back at them, and we're either going to feel proud because we took a stand, or we're going to feel some measure of shame because we chose to be safe. And I refuse the latter.
Good for you, and I know that's who you are, but I think it deserves to be acknowledged, and I thank you for your courage and your willingness to see this in such stark human terms too. I think that's so important.
I can't really help that. It's in my face.
Do your kids see it? Do you? I mean, the students at Monarch, do they?
Yes.
Are they watching all of this and experiencing that as well?
Yes, they are terrified, and so are their families. Yes, they're terrified. We're seeing enrollment being impacted because of fear. We're watching what it looks like to see people deal with true existential threat that isn't imagined, right? And the kids know and feel that. Kids always know and feel what's going on with the adults around them, right? A traumatized kid, they're skilled at feeling what adults feel. And so, yes, they know.
What do you think? I'm beginning to think about this question a lot, and so it's not just for you, but it's partly I'm trying to figure it out myself. But so you beautifully described the strain of American sentiment that is emergent right now, which views people who are suffering from hardship or challenge as it being their fault. That's not new. I mean, there has been that narrative as part of the American and human story for a long time. But to your point, it's always been in tension with the hopefully stronger tendency towards compassion and
right.
Why
and leaving kids out of the equation.
And leaving
right?
kids, certainly leaving kids out of the equation. Why? I mean, politics aside, why do you think the other tendency is so ascendant at the moment? Or maybe we can't leave politics aside, and that is the reason.
I don't think we can. Yeah, I don't think we can. I think that, any sociologist that has studied politics or any political scientist through historian will tell you that there are ways to galvanize society in positive ways or negative ways to achieve outcomes, right? And fear is an extraordinary motivator, as is nationalism. Right. These are evidence truths throughout history, and this is a country that is rooted in a great deal in racism. Our institutions are rooted in racism, and so when we create environments where we are afraid of the other, even if we're benefiting from the other, but we're more afraid of the other, well, now we're creating a situation where we will galvanize people to work on behalf of an idea that is even counter to their own best interest, right? Now, the opposite works too, right? We could do the opposite. We could galvanize people around the idea that the collective energy and collective success is a benefit to all of us. And that has happened throughout history also. But we're in a different time now where we have made the decision as a nation to try to other ourselves or each other in a way that that is harmful to the progression of society, in my opinion. At
Prebys Foundation's WAIFs Festival that we launched.
I was there. It was great.
Yes, that you were. Thank you. But David Brooks spoke, and he talked about some of this dynamic in society, and he spoke about America's experience coming out of the Gilded Age and the emergence of the social gospel, where religion, and particularly Christianity at that point, stepped in with a new vision of social responsibility to reestablish what you just said,
That's
which was
a great
the
example.
collective.
Right.
But how do we do that today?
I think it requires a great deal of courage from people who are not necessarily expected to demonstrate that level of, or haven't been expected to demonstrate that level of courage. And I'm talking about people like you, Grant, that run powerful and important institutions. I'm talking about people who are part of the majority in our country that are willing and able to speak out as advocates on behalf of a population that they don't even relate to protect an ideal. The reality is Black and brown and BIPOC people in this country are going to continue to be increasingly marginalized if our brothers and sisters who are Caucasian are not willing to stand in front of us and communicate what needs to be done differently, and to do it with strength and with their whole chest. These things matter. It will also make a difference when people feel compelled by what they're ingesting. Right. So media, their religious environments, wherever they're ingesting the information that gives them a perspective on what society should be, what they're ingesting matters. We see that today, right? What happens when we're all getting our news from social media and that
nothing good,
but maybe it could be, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's hope in how we use those vehicles differently.
All right, we are crazily out of time because this just sped by. But I do want to leave a moment just to ask you, as you think about what lies ahead, what excites you looking ahead?
I am ever thrilled to watch our students enter adulthood fired up to be the next generation of leaders. I think of a student that graduated a couple weeks ago. Her name is Karina. The kid's brilliant. She's, if she does, I get it if she doesn't run for office, but she's got to do something. I see, not to pat myself on the back because this kid's smarter than me, but I see myself in her, and that's exciting to me because she's brilliant and she's got everything it takes to be successful. And there's classes and classes and classes of those kids graduating right now across the country. That excites me. I look at my own daughters and recognize how completely brilliant they are and prepared they are to speak truth to power. That's exciting to me. And I'm watching also the way that sometimes things have to hit rock bottom before they rebuild in a way that makes sense. And I think we're approaching that as a nation. I think there's a sense of we're falling apart a little bit and maybe we need to do this differently. That excites me. And then personally, I would say, Grant, I'm excited about what's likely next for me, which feels like it's work that is at a more systemic level. I'm feeling called to, and I don't mean that in a religious way. I mean, I'm feeling like the moment is demanding people who have the will and skill that I have to do more and say more and be more present. And that excites me, even though I don't know what it looks like yet.
Beautiful. Well, I just, I have to say before we wrap up that you are, among your many other distinctions, a Prebys Leadership Award winner.
Yeah,
and
that
we
was
are
incredible.
so
Thank you.
proud to have you in that community. You are a profile in leadership and courage, and leading from a place of love. And thank you for everything you're doing for this community.
Thank you, friend, really.
Yeah. All right.
That award was a point of pride that will be etched on my gravestone, I think. So thank you.
No time soon, please.
No,
All right.
no time soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Never have I walked away from listening to an interview and realized how important it is when we're with our youth that sometimes we're quiet and we just listen to them.
Yeah, everything about that interview was powerful, and that was one of the lessons. I think just the way she values kids, by extension of what you said, was an incredibly important message. And the way she talked about meeting kids where they are and building on their assets and their strengths, as opposed to trying to fix them, I thought that was extraordinary. So a lot to think about in this interview, especially now when we're in kind of this very difficult place around education and kids and culture in the country. What she's doing is providing really strong leadership.
Right. And building off of that, I think the moment when the youth reminded her, please don't tour people around here as if we are a problem to be solved, that brings an immediate dignity back to how we approach people. And I think we definitely need that in this moment.
I am struck. I'm sitting here also with the memory of having been in the room when that young man that we talked about came and played the piano. And I remember the look on her face, the complete surprise and awe. And I didn't know what was going on other than that he was pretty good at the piano. I think one lesson for me is if we could just learn to value each other differently and kids obviously differently, we will have so much more of a productive future together.
I think you're right. And as we wind down, I would say valuing the kids, but I noticed when you two started that conversation, she also had a value in herself.
Mm-hmm.
Her values are rooted deeply in her understanding who she is, what her parents brought to the table, regardless of where they were in their life. So I think it's, that respect of others, but also us taking the time to get to know ourselves and what those roots are.
Beautiful way to end.
Yeah.
All right.
Great chatting
Thank
with you.
Stop. Talk to me.
You know what I'm talking about.